Right now, right now. 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 Oh, I got a real good feeling.
We try to bring you high-quality educational and informational content every single day. Why do you think the price is having such an anemic time? The news story of the hour. Jump onto the chart. Is this the beginning of a massive financial unraveling? We've got to add a little addendum to the show map today, so we start here on the daily. Now, we've been looking at the RSI on Bitcoin's daily chart for the last several days. They always have been, but it's been increasing over the last 50 years since it's been out. The government has been Hey guys, what's going on? Jebb here, and welcome back to Coffee and Crypto. This is your weekday morning show where we go live 10 a.m. Eastern every single weekday, normally from the studio, but sometimes from my son's bedroom. I'm going to explain that here in just a second. And we're here to talk about your latest in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency technical, on-chain, and fundamental analysis, because over the last, well, about an hour and a half, Bitcoin has been rallying quite substantially. You may have noticed it on CoinMarketCap. Bitcoin's jumped almost $1,000 in just the last few hours. You might be wondering, well, Jebb, why? Why exactly is Bitcoin rallying in exactly the last 90 minutes? Well, that is because 90 minutes ago from when I'm talking right now at 10 a.m. Eastern sharp, CPI data dropped, and it was very bullish. Last month, CPI came back at 7.7. The month before, it was in the mid-8s. The month before that, it was in the 9 territory. Right now, we have just seen CPI estimated to come back at 7.3, come out at 7.1. We saw a beat on CPI, and that is incredibly important for a multitude of reasons. So much to unpack here. This seems like a very simple thing, and it's just not. There are massive geopolitical, global market, and for what you came for, cryptocurrency implications about what just occurred on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Going to explain a little bit more later why I am here today, but in short, my son and my wife are both very sick, so I wanted to be able to be home to take care of them. So I ran to the office really quickly, got my laptop, and we're going to be streaming from home today. Hope you guys don't mind. Let's go ahead and read some chat, and then we're going to jump straight on into it. Puddle Pirate Adventure said, morning. Some guy named Crypto Jeeb said, good morning, everybody. Oh, that's me. Hi. Yes. Good morning, everyone. We got Oh My in chat. Carter Mason. Oh My again said, hashtag FinSov. Justin Eubanks in chat. What's up, man? Shouting out the green names. Got Mike Lowry said, good morning, everyone. Hashtag FinSov. For any of you guys who are new here and don't know what FinSov is, that is the shorthand of financial sovereignty, which is a concept that I came up with where you guys have total and complete sovereignty, control, power, authority, and whatever you want to call it, over your money, over your financial picture, over your income, over the currencies you use, over the banking situation that you are making the most of. I want you guys to have total and complete control over your finances so that they are serving you and you are their sovereign, not the other way around, as so many people in the 21st century live. We got Grand Roofing Incorporated in chat as well. Let's see. We also got Queens in chat, Justin Eubanks, Freedom Advocate. A lot of people in chat. Really appreciate everybody tuning in. Thank you guys so very much for tuning in. Guys, we're going to jump straight on into it with the CPI data. I'm not going to pull your leg and make you wait. Let's just go ahead and jump right on into it. We got a lot to talk about with the must watch, and the CPI data, and Bitcoin, and Sam Bankman-Fried, because don't forget, Sam Bankman-Fried was supposed to testify before Congress today, and then he got arrested. About time. We'll get into all of that in a second, but the thing you came here for was this number. If you guys are not familiar with where to track CPI, you're going to want to go to BLS, that's the Bureau of Labor Statistics.gov /CPI, CPI standing for Consumer Price Index. This right here shows you the 4 major categories of CPI. You have major category, you have all items right here. This is what we call headline inflation. This is the inflation data that gets posted everywhere. This is the inflation data that everybody's paying attention to, although this is not the only piece of inflation data that we have, because we also have food inflation data, then we have energy inflation data, then we have all items less food and energy in the context of inflation data. If you click this read more button, it'll bring you over to this chart right here, and this will show you what the 12-month rolling moving average of the inflation of all of these different categories has been in November 2022. So this is what we just got updated. we were getting the drop happened today, December 13th, 2022, for last month, November 2022, and these are the numbers. All items sitting at 7.1, food sitting at 10.6, energy sitting at 13.1, and all items less food and energy sitting at 6. The thing that you're going to want to take away from this is that 7.1 is a beat, and we're going to get back into the actual details of these numbers later because I want to really dig into this. I don't want to just sit here and say, okay, boom, we got 0.6% lower CPI. I want to explain to you exactly why CPI is so important, what it means. I also want to explain to you the energy picture that's going on around the world and the implications that has on CPI, which therefore has an implication on the Federal Reserve's monetary policy, which we're getting a data drop on that tomorrow, and how all of that impacts Bitcoin. You might be wondering, Jebb, how in the world do all of these federally documented numbers have to do with Bitcoin? Well, they are the single biggest drivers of Bitcoin's price right now. Yes, I mean even bigger than FTX. FTX was a black swan, dropped Bitcoin $4,000. This is still bigger, and I'm going to break down exactly why in this video. But again, let's go over the basics. Right now, core CPI sitting at 7.1. As you can see right down here, consumer price index was sitting at 7.7 in October of 2022. We can even go to CPI over here in the cryptocurrency consumer price index, and it should give it to me right here, and you will be able to see the, well, actually, okay, it doesn't want to pull it up for me. It's CPI YOY, I think is what I'm looking for. There we go. CPI year over year. This is what I'm looking at. This is actually core. I want regular CPI. Let's see if I can find US CPI data. This is what I'm looking at right here. No, actually, I take that back. It's US CPI, and then it's median year over year. I believe this is the one I'm looking for. Yes, here we go. This is what I'm looking for, I think. We'll see if I'm wrong on this. Nevertheless, these markets right here show you basically the consumer price index on the United States, where it's going. This is the median year over year. So there's actually others in here. If you come into US CPI, you can find things such as the actual consumer price index here. You can see how much the consumer price index has jumped, because remember, this is a number that is updated based on the year over year moving average. But basically all this is doing is taking whatever the market was looking like a year ago and seeing how much we went up. You can see from November of 2021 right here. This is pretty much all they're doing. They're just coming in here every single year, drawing a moving average. So we have a 7.1% increase, as you can see right there. It'd be very simple to just come in here and set up a moving average that is a 12 simple moving average, and you'll see that that is actually going to be tracking basically what CPI data is. That 12 moving average would come in here, and it'd be a lot lower, but it would basically give you that similar idea of what CPI is doing. So this is the actual number of the consumer price index. The CPI data itself is the change. So we were sitting at 7.7%. We dropped down to 7.1. That is very important because the CPI is one of the biggest impactors of what we look at here on the effective federal funds rate, target rate probabilities set over here at CME Group Futures, CMEGroup.com. Essentially, CME Group is predicting what the effective federal funds rate is going to be set at their meeting today and tomorrow. So that's why I told you that this was going to be an incredibly important week yesterday. I told you, if you're watching this stream, if you had the notification bell on, you would know that this was going to be a very important week, because this week, not only was Sam Bankman-Fried supposed to testify in front of Congress, we're going to talk about that in a second, we also had a very bullish CPI data drop coming out. I was predicting between 7.1 and 7.3. We came back at 7.1. And we also have the effective federal funds rate being set. All three of these things are bullish news stories. It is going to help the industry breathe a, let's do it with me, sigh of relief that Sam Bankman-Fried is finally in custody, where he belongs. Now, of course, he's awaiting trial, but he belongs in custody, and it's a good thing. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. CPI coming out at 0.6% lower indicates that the market is starting to recover, at least from an inflationary standpoint. Not so much recover, but the damage is starting to slow down, might be the better way to put it, because you're never going to see prices go back to what they were. Just remember to what the chart looked like. The chart, we might be going back to, we might be, you know, not having as dramatic of rises and rallies in the CPI percentage points anymore, but we're still massively higher than we were. We're still 15% higher than we were in December of 2020, just 2 years ago. So we've still seen 15% core inflation of the entire consumer price index in that time. And if we look at the last multitude of years, just since 1975, we've seen an increase of 440%, indicating that prices are getting absolutely out of control. So, let's back up for a second. I need to tie a whole picture together for you. As usual, we're going to start from the highest level I possibly can, then we're going to zoom into the financial situation and economic and monetary situation in the United States, then talk about CPI and how that has knock-on effects back onto cryptocurrency. I want you to understand that all of this impacts crypto. You guys are obviously here for crypto, but if you're trying to understand Bitcoin in a vacuum and not understand the rest of the markets, you're going to have a hard time. We're going to be doing some technical analysis, actually quite a lot of TA on Bitcoin today, so stay tuned for that as well. Okay, on the geopolitical front, there are two major actors that the West and the modern free world are concerned about. Their names are Russia and China. Russia is an aggressor in the Russo-Ukrainian war. China has been threatening Taiwan for a very long time. This has set the geopolitical stage in a way that has not been done since the pandemic, and in a way the pandemic had not done since the 2008 financial crisis, in the way the 2008 financial crisis had not done since September 11th attacks in 2001. Two major crises, pandemic and conflict, at the exact same time in a historical context within 2 years of each other, has completely disrupted the entire global supply chain, has thrown the manufacturing sector into a complete tailspin, because whereas people were doing a lot of their manufacturing in China, where they were able to outsource all of the manufacturing to China, Thailand, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, all these different nations down there, a lot of the manufacturing was going on there. A lot of that is being shifted because every one of those countries has taken its own pandemic policy. Every single one of those countries is in the sphere of influence of China, who is now getting to be on the bad side of the United States and has more or less descended into a one-man dictatorship in a similar way to what North Korea has because of how isolated Chairman Xi Jinping is. That's a very big problem for the United States because the United States is a major trading partner with China while also being completely ideologically, antipodally distant from China. At the same time, the United States also wants to maintain a strong currency against an upstart Chinese economy that is trying to position itself as the world reserve currency. It won't ever do it, but they're trying to. And they also want to position themselves in a very strong stance against Russia, who is attacking Ukraine, whereas the United States federal government is backing Ukraine, hoping that Ukraine boots on the ground, paired with the United States military and weapon systems, military tactical support and weapon systems, can actually do basically a death blow to Russia and cause Russia to collapse on itself internally. That's what the United States is looking at on the geopolitical landscape. There's a lot more to that, but even just yesterday, we saw that the United States, actually Japan, confirmed that the United States will be selling hundreds of Tomahawk cruise missiles to Japan, which is one of the first times in history that has ever occurred. To my knowledge, the only other two countries that have Tomahawk cruise missiles, United States product, are Australia and the United Kingdom, because America wants to box in China and allow for our allies in the region to be able to threaten China if China were ever to attack Taiwan or to try and disrupt American shipping or the American economy through declaring some kind of war over there of expansionism, similar to what Russia did. The United States wants our allies over there to be able to defend themselves against a potentially aggressive state like China, which will more than likely become aggressive within the next 8 years because of the demographical crises and many other crises that they are facing as a result of poor authoritarian leadership. So again, that's what the United States is looking at on a geopolitical front. The Americans fight this battle financially. We do not have boots on the ground. People are burnt out of conflict in the 21st century in the United States. Good. That's a good thing. People do not want another Iraq war. They don't want another Afghanistan. They don't want another chasing down ISIS in Syria. The American people are tired of it. So the government realizes, hey, we don't really have the backing back home to go and put 100,000 boots on the ground and defend Taiwan unless they actually literally got attacked. What America does have is a juggernaut economy that is in the strongest position of any country in the world by an order of magnitude. So that's why we've been sending a lot of weapon systems and aids to Ukraine. It's also why we're sending and selling weapon systems to our allies in the Pacific. The way that the United States maintains its global hegemony is by maintaining an extremely strong dollar, which is something that the inflation that we've seen come in from the printing that took place during the pandemic lockdowns can undermine. So, since we have such a strong economy, and since we are basically the end customer of the entire world of manufacturing, more or less, What the federal government wants to do is raise rates extremely aggressively for two reasons. Number one, to get inflation under control very quickly so that we maintain a very strong currency and solidify our position as the world reserve currency status, not only on the geopolitical stage, but also inside of NATO to shore up the alliance should Russia somehow win the Ukrainian war and want to march on towards well, not Belarus, they're allied, but Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, etc., some of the Baltic states, or even further south. On the other hand, the United States also wants to maintain very high interest rates because that gives the Federal Reserve basically ammunition if there is another recession that comes, because I believe that we've been in a recession for the last 2 years. A lot of data does point it to that. It is a first of all, it's skewed data. Second of all, this is not a recession the likes of which we've seen in a very long time, so it's a little bit strange and difficult to define. But the United States federal government realizes with all these changes in manufacturing, likely the rest of the world is going to go through a very hard time. The United States will likely be able to adapt very well. But since we have the strongest economy by far, what the United States federal government wants to do is maintain extremely high interest rates, probably higher than 5% at this point, so that we have the ability to lower those interest rates to inject liquidity into the economy. Basically, the United States wants to high altitude train the United States in a competition stance. If you're an athlete, one of the best things that you can do to prepare for competition is to go and do your training at 8,000 feet above sea level. Because when you go back down to sea level, you are going to have much stronger lungs because you had to adapt to a very difficult environment. That's kind of what the Federal Reserve is trying to do right now, getting rates very, very high so that the U.S. economy can adapt to having 5, 6, 7% interest rates. And then if the United States ever needs some kind of jump start and some NOS added to it, all the Federal Reserve has to do is lower those interest rates 50 basis points, and then you have an injection of liquidity, slightly cheaper capital, and a little bit of an afterburner on the United States economy so that we can push through a potential future recession and also maintain a strong currency against the geopolitical aggressors, Russia and China. That's what the United States is doing right now, and that's why CPI is so important, because CPI is exactly what the Federal Reserve is trying to fight so that they can maintain as strong of a dollar as possible. The Federal Reserve does not want inflation. They want inflation as low as possible so that we're able to maintain as strong of a currency as possible so that we're able to maintain a very strong stance against these other geopolitical adversaries that are ideologically antipodal to what we believe in the modern free Western world. So, that's the geopolitical landscape. Now, let's kind of pass through the barrier of CPI and then start talking about crypto. CPI came back at 7.7 last month. It's at 7.1 right now. That's very bullish. Essentially, what that means is that inflation is coming down fast. If you have been looking at fuel prices, as I have been, not only gasoline prices, but also things like natural gas prices, which are incredibly important in Europe and also in America. I could go on an entire video about that. They've come down substantially. In fact, we're seeing a lot of natural gas infrastructure leave Europe because of what's going on with the Russo-Ukrainian conflict and all the natural gas pipelines that have been shut down either due to sanctions or due to Russia shutting them down themselves, Nord Stream. A lot of the big natural gas chemical manufacturers are moving to places like Louisiana, Texas. Some of them are moving to the Midwest. We're having a massive influx of natural gas infrastructure and creation taking place in the United States, as well as a petrochemical resurgence taking place in Texas as a result of a lot of the world falling apart from a globalization standpoint. That is meaning that one of the biggest leaders of inflation in this data set, which is this right here, let me find it, natural gas pipe, 15.5%. That is one of the highest numbers that we have here. There are some food staples that are very high, like cereals and bakery products. But the thing is, cereal. How do you get cereal and bakery products? You have to run extremely gas-guzzling machines and energy sink machinery to be able to get this end result. A lot of this inflation is actually coming from this inflation. Energy, fuel oil, 65.7%. Gasoline is up 10.1%. Fuel oil is one of the biggest contributors to inflation right now. Natural gas pipelines, piped natural gas being another one of the largest contributors to inflation. The reason that that's so important is because the United States is starting now to onshore many of these industries. We're having a lot more fracking taking place. We're having a lot more oil drilling taking place. We did just see a big explosion in the Keystone XL pipeline, so that's definitely not going to help for next month's. But we're seeing quite a lot of resurgence in the petrochemical and the energy sector in the United States, which is going to help to bring down this core CPI data, and that's probably what we're going to see happen. We're likely going to see CPI drop down to the maybe 6.5 next month, and then maybe down into the 5 or 6 territory in the months to follow. We'll probably sit there for a little while until we start to have some of this trailing data drop off, because a lot of this rally here, a lot of this increase right here, this was like 125% just several months ago, just the fuel oil here. A lot of that increase in the data happened 9, 10, 11, 12 months ago. Over the next few months, a lot of that trailing data is going to drop off, causing this to drop very, very quickly, because a lot of this has stabilized in the last 3 to 4 months. But you still have a year ago's data from before the Russo-Ukrainian conflict began, where we saw prices were much lower. Prices are starting to stabilize at a higher level. And the inflation is starting to stabilize at a higher level, but it takes time for that data to drop off, since this is a 12-month rolling average. So what does all this mean for the end user, the citizen of the United States? Well, frankly, this means that the effective federal funds rate is likely going to hike, and it's going to continue to hike, because a lot of people think that if inflation comes down, the Federal Reserve is going to drop rates. And I've said that, but I'm starting to think that may be a bit of a narrow-minded view of why the Fed is actually raising rates in the first place. The Fed is not just raising rates to combat inflation. And I think that's been a misconception that many of us have had, and I think I've had that misconception too. That's why they started raising rates. But I don't think that's the only motive. I think they're also raising rates, as I said, to prepare us to have some kind of economic tool if and when we go into a major global recession as a result of the complete dismantling of globalization that has begun during the pandemic and has been exacerbated as a result of the Russo-Ukrainian conflict, and that could be just completely put to an end as a result of a conflict in Taiwan. By the way, this is a complete side note. President Xi Jinping of China is basically a one-man dictatorship of the country, and if something were to happen to him and he was to die, that entire country collapses in on itself. So just keep an eye out for that, and remember what I said. If you start seeing things come up like, which he would probably never let it out, but if President Xi started having major health problems and fell apart, the entire nation of 1.3 billion people draws all of its authority from President Xi Jinping. The entire country could collapse on itself, which would definitely cause a global recession as a result of one man dying. So don't wish ill will on anybody, but just keep that in mind. That's a very unstable system, and whoever takes it over could be much more free, much more democratic, or they could be much more authoritarian and just make a mad dash for Taiwan before the demographical crisis takes them over. So there's a lot at play right now. But again, what does this mean for crypto? What does this mean for the citizen of the United States? What this means for the citizen of the United States is that you can assume that the effective federal funds rate is going to continue to march higher. We're going to see a 50 basis point rate hike tomorrow, almost certainly, but keep in mind, that's not a drop on the effective federal funds rate. That is a slowing down of the increase. It's still going up. We're going to see the EFFR more than likely sitting at 4.25 to 4.5. From there, at the February 2023 meeting, there's still a very high likelihood that they put out another 50 basis point rate hike. I've been under the assumption that they're going to put out a 25 and then a 0 and plateau at 5, and they very well may. Maybe they think that's enough, but a lot of what the Federal Reserve does here is going to have to do with, again, and this is a factor that many people in the crypto markets are missing, this is going to have to do, again, with the geopolitical landscape. How's the conflict going in Russia-Ukraine? Have the Ukrainians made progress? Have they blown up the Kerch Strait Bridge again? Are they trying to do a pincer movement towards Melitopol? I never know how to say that city. Are they trying to take Crimea back? Have the Russians somehow made an advance over the Dnipro River? What's going on in Russia and Ukraine? What's going on with, and the Americans are going to know this because we're one of the people that are funding the Ukrainians so heavily. What's going on with Ukraine? Are they able to do a lot of the deferred maintenance on the captured Russian equipment so they their own territory. What's going on with the Chinese-Taiwanese situation? Is there a potential conflict brewing there, or is that several years down the road? It's probably going to happen. China will probably lose, but it's probably going to happen because the last-ditch effort at some kind of supremacy in the South China Sea. What's going on geopolitically is going to have a big impact on this. Right now, many people are predicting that they're going to do a 25 basis point rate hike, but we really don't know. CPI coming down is very good for the consumer of the United States dollar and a citizen of the United States at large. But it's also very good for Bitcoin. And so now we're going to take our story into Bitcoin. I'm going to talk about that here in just a second. But I do just first want to read chat, see how you guys are doing. We got 600 people watching, only 150 likes. Guys, make sure to go ahead and smash that like button if you have not already. Let's see if we can't get up to 300 likes relatively soon. Let's go ahead and read some chat here. We got Martine Seabolds in chat. What's up, my friend? Matt C's in chat again. M Star said, Jebb, I hope you and Sarah are okay. Last I heard, you were headed to the doctor. Yeah, it's been a hard couple of weeks, to be totally honest. We got Silent in chat as well. Shannon Sharp. Let's see. Flavio Goncalves. I still don't know how to. Still don't know how to say that. Gary Gensler's in chat. What's up, Gary? Said Jebb can hold his breath underwater for 37 minutes. Well, I hope you can hold your breath for 40 years because a lot of people are coming for you and they want you in jail, buddy. We're going to talk about Gary here in just a little bit as well. All right. Let's see. Lazarus hand in chat. What's up? Today is Project Get the Tree Up. Yeah, we've had our Christmas tree up for like 6 weeks because we put it up in the first week of November. Oh, man. All right. So, guys, just as far as a little bit of an update, the reason I'm home right now is because my son woke up crying in the middle of the night. He was very sick, and I checked him, and he had a fever, 100-degree fever, so he wasn't able to go to preschool, and we wanted to make sure that he was taken care of. So we stayed home today, and at the exact same time, Sarah was having a ton of abdominal pain. And that's not really something you want while you're pregnant. So we're going to be trying to reach out to a doctor because that's something that's been going on for about a week now. We took off Thursday and Friday because of it, and we were hoping that it was getting better, but it doesn't seem to be getting better. So we'll be 22 weeks on Thursday, so we're hoping that everything's okay, and praying for us. Pray for us, please. But, yeah, so that's why I'm here at the studio today. Got a lot of work going on, a lot of things that we're doing, yeah, we're hoping that everything will be okay. We're praying that everything will be. All right. So let's go ahead and jump right back on into it. Again, let's go ahead and jump into the crypto segment of this. As you guys know, obviously, CPI data drop is a big deal for crypto. Right now, we see that Bitcoin is up 4.37% over the last 24 hours. Just taking a look at Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency itself, you will be able to see that it has rallied substantially in just the last few hours. We saw a big pump here at 4 a.m. this morning, which is about when I woke up. Then this morning at, let's see, about 8:30, right when the CPI data drop came out. Let's just go to the minute chart here. Why not? Right around the time the CPI data drop came out, everybody saw it, and then boom, Cold Fusion discovered. We got a 2.2% jump to the upside. $400 rally in the span of 60 seconds. From there, Bitcoin has been flagging out, plateauing, then dropping and bouncing, and et cetera, et cetera. The good news is that this means that Bitcoin has broken bullish out of its rising wedge. You guys know that we've been looking at this level right here, the rising wedge, and I've been telling you guys, look, from a technical standpoint, there's a good likelihood that we could break to the downside here. What that did not take into account is the fact that we could have ended up seeing this bullish of a CPI print. I was expecting a 7.1. Frankly, I was expecting that we would drop first and then maybe try and bounce from here. I'm actually very happy that we've managed to rally here. This is kind of what the market is doing. Basically, the market is trying to institute a new, slower uptrend. And that new, slower uptrend is, in theory, trying to build higher highs and higher lows and establish more and more VPVR, or VRVP, because they changed the name on me, VRVP support up here above $16,500. Every dollar that we move to the upside, this point of control gets dragged a little bit higher, in theory anyway. And we start to see more and more support being built in this region right here. We're above the point of control right now, which is currently sitting at $17,000. And the Bitcoin market wants to stay that way because if the Bitcoin market can stay above this level, so I'll just go ahead and draw a line right here, at $16,947 and change, then that is going to mean that Bitcoin is on the bullish side of things. It means that it is on the slope to the downside. If you remember what we talk about VPVR, basically the Bitcoin market is like a ball and it rolls down the hill. In this case, we're sitting on the far side of the hill, the bullish side of the hill. I guess maybe we should take it from a bull half full context and say we're sitting on the near side of the hill and we're rolling back towards the highs. When you get the ball up here on top of the hill, gravity takes it down one way or the other. It's a very unstable position to be sitting right here on top of the VRVP hill. The market generally won't stay there for very long. It might stay there long enough to build the hill, but then it's going to end up rolling down the hill one way or the other. The scenario that we were painting based on the rising wedge here was rolling down the hill. Right now, what Bitcoin has chosen to do is to roll up the hill. And in doing so, Bitcoin has actually broken a ton of resistance. And I can show you exactly what resistance we're talking about right here. Some of the resistance that we're looking at took place at this level right here. You can see that was some resistance. You can also see that we've broken clearly above a lot of support. We came back and back tested it last night, and then we bounced off and rallied from the very bottom of that range all the way to the top. Going ahead and taking away VRVP here, we'll see a little bit better. And then the other thing here is that down here on the hourly chart, Lux Algo has absolutely taken off. You can see that we've been in a buy signal on Lux Algo for a while here anyway. And that buy signal was confirmed by Trendcatcher. We'd seen a strong sell signal, which was leading us to wonder, okay, are we actually going to be able to go to the upside? Because we'd fallen bearish out of this uptrend, and that's where we were yesterday. We were sitting on the downside of this uptrend, not really sure whether or not we were actually going to be able to break to the upside. Then we see a buy signal come into play here this morning, which was already confirmed by this, so we just reconfirmed and got rid of the strong sell signal, and then Bitcoin took off. This is a great reason, my friends, to use Lux Algo. Lux Algo is absolutely phenomenal. You can see the buy signal came in right here. It was already confirmed, so we basically just looked from the buy signal forward because it invalidated this strong sell signal. We broke up into the reversal zone right here, and then right here, right there is where, if you were trading this, that's exactly where you would have wanted to put a trade in. Because if you saw the market jumping that hard at 4 a.m., and we were pretty confident that we were going to see a bullish CPI data drop, it might have been 7.5, might have been 7.3, might have been 7.1. We didn't know what it would be, but we were pretty confident that it was going to be a better CPI print, just because the landscape of things has been trending sideways. That's where you could have put a trade in, and especially when you saw the market bounce up here and then drop a little bit and then go through the rally at 8:30. Pretty much at 8:30, if you saw the CPI data drop and you're already in a long that you entered here around $17,300, boom, double the leverage, and then have a very conservative trailing stop loss that is following along that trade, so that if the market drops more than $100, then you cash in and then print money. That's essentially how the money printer goes burr in the cryptocurrency industry, is whenever you know that there's a massive bullish news drop coming up, but it hasn't been priced in yet, and then you have a trailing stop loss that is very conservative and a lot of leverage on it. You need to have that trailing stop loss, or the lot of leverage is very dangerous. But if you have the trailing stop loss and you're already in profit, then go for it. Dump leverage into it. Why not? Because you're going to be in profit one way or the other, and that's where you could have made a lot of money here, and Lux Algo would have been the perfect indicator to give you that prediction. You can see the buy signal had a price target up here, $18,000 to $18,300. We almost reached that. This will have actually been a reset of the price target. I can almost guarantee you that right here, that was not the original price target of the buy signal. We likely hit the original buy signal and then blasted straight through it. Yes, as you can see right here, our original buy signal, take profit for the buy signal, was sitting up here at $17,400. If we just go ahead and scrub the replay forward just a little bit, you'll see very quickly after we got into the take profit zone, it jumped forward a little bit more, and then it was originally sitting right here. We blasted through it, and this is actually the third updated take profit zone from this buy signal. So we blasted straight through the first two, indicating a massive amount of bullishness. But what happens here? So to answer that question, we have to kind of back up a little bit, and we have to take a look at what's going on in the rest of the crypto market and the rest of the global market. Geopolitically, you have the backing for why CPI is so important. You have the backing for why it is the most important metric for you to be watching in Bitcoin right now, CPI. And the effective federal funds rate is a very close second. And to be honest with you, you could argue that they're tied. Tomorrow, we're seeing CPI drop. The effective federal funds rate drop, which is going to give us an indication as to whether or not Bitcoin is going to go to the upside a lot as well. I think you're going to see that happen. I think you're going to see the effective federal funds rate come back at 50 basis points. We're very confident that that's going to occur at this point. If it comes back at 70, expect Bitcoin to drop down to $17,200. If not, you have a very strong reason to believe that Bitcoin could try and break above this level of resistance, which is currently sitting at $18,171. This is a very important level of resistance because it is set back here from the initial bounce after the FTX meltdown, and it is also a major level of support that was used for a multitude of months. It was our primary level of support that we came back and tested 3 times in September and also in October of 2022. And going back in time even more, that was more or less the bottoming point for this market back over here at the beginning in around June 18th when Bitcoin originally bottomed out. If you see CPI, if you see the funds rate come out at 50 basis points, you likely see the market try and break through $18,200, $18,171. You likely see the market try and break through $18,171, and then you potentially even bottom out right here and then continue rallying further to the upside. That's what we're going to want to look for right now over the next several weeks. Over the next several weeks. Yes, that's where we're going to want to break, but especially over just the next 24 to 48 hours, what is the federal funds rate going to be? Can we break above 18,171 and then bounce and rally from there? That is what I want to keep a close eye on, and I honestly think that there's a pretty good likelihood of it doing that. I also think that there's a pretty strong likelihood of Bitcoin attempting to turn this uptrending level of resistance into support as we build a ascending triangle pattern right here that we'll be able to use as a breakout characteristic right here. Also keep in mind that you're likely going to see an increase in Bitcoin short liquidations taking place over the next few days if we see this movement stay up here for a prolonged period of time and if Bitcoin pushes much further to the upside. You can see just today there's been almost $100 million worth of short liquidations because many people were believing that the market was not done moving to the downside. We saw $66 million in short liquidations take place in the span of just 1 hour at 8 a.m. this morning. Go figure, when that CPI data dropped. A lot of people were not expecting CPI to be that bullish. What I didn't expect was for Bitcoin to already be moving up here. I thought Bitcoin would have broken to the downside, been trading down around 16.7 when the CPI data dropped. Then we would bounce and rally up to like 17.2, and it would be a bit of a nothing burger, and then those shorts wouldn't have gotten liquidated. You never would have had the short squeeze, and you would have topped out here at 17.3. The reason that CPI data was so bullish for the market and why it's done so much for the market is because we were already sitting up here at local highs when the CPI data dropped. It was all about timing. I wasn't sure whether or not Bitcoin would be sitting up here at new highs or if it'd be sitting down here near fresh lows, as we saw right here just yesterday. I didn't really expect for Bitcoin, and I'll be honest, I didn't really expect for Bitcoin to break back up into the rising wedge in the way that it did towards the later part of the day. I expected that Bitcoin would be pushing back down towards 16.7, would be sitting down here with not a lot of bullishness, and then CPI would bounce it, but we'd probably reject off of this rising level of support, and then we would more than likely keep trading sideways from there. I am definitely pleasantly surprised, and I'm very happy that I was wrong. So definitely keep an eye on this level right here, because something very similar could happen tomorrow, seeing that Bitcoin is already sitting at local highs. But if Bitcoin somehow in the next 24 hours drops back down here to, say, $17,200 and is trading sideways around here, or just isn't doing a whole lot and is in kind of lame territory, then the effect of the funds rate coming out would not compound on itself because we would have lost all the gains that we made over here. We might see another big pump up to $18,000 or so, but then we might not actually have enough momentum to carry it on because there's not any follow through. What we need to see happen is that we need to see both of these news stories line up at pretty much the same time, which they are. They're only a day apart, but they need to line up price action wise, and we'd like to see Bitcoin staying above 17.7, at least 17.6, so that when that news does drop of a 50 basis point rate hike, we could see a much bigger rally, and both of these news stories can compound on each other rather than being so far apart that they actually have no impact on each other at all. That's what we're going to want to pay attention to over the next 48 hours, and of course, we will be bringing you the latest on that here on the Crypto Jebb YouTube channel. Let's go ahead and go back to full screen. We're going to talk more about the future of Bitcoin and what's going to happen next, how CPI is going to impact a lot of things, but we also have to talk about the most infamous character in crypto. His name is none other than Sam Bankman-Fried, and we're going to talk about him coming up pretty soon because he just got arrested. Make sure to stay tuned for that. 700 people watching. We've only got 251 likes. Do me a favor. Please, do me a favor. Smash the like button. I know that we can get to 500 likes here in the next couple of minutes. Helps to support the channel. I really appreciate all of you guys tuning in. Over the 5+ years that I've been doing YouTube here, You guys have been so very supportive of me. I was just telling somebody yesterday about all of the really awesome responses to the face reveal that I did on the second birthday of the channel back in 2019. It's crazy to say that was the second birthday of the channel. That was 2019. Can't believe the channel is already over 5 years old now, but just really appreciate all of the just legendary support that you guys have given me over the years. So just a side note, let's take a look at chat here. Tomorrow the same, 50 basis points is all you need to pump to 19,000-ish. I think that you're probably right. I do think you're right, and I think the industry is going to become a lot more placated by the fact that SBF just got arrested. That does change a lot of things from the cultural landscape of crypto. A lot of people that were very, and a lot of businesses are watching very closely on this also. A lot of people and companies do not want to get into an industry where you can get away with defrauding people of billions of dollars. But if there's justice done on Sam Bankman-Fried, and please God, there needs to be, we need to forgive him and not hold bitterness in our heart. I made a video about that. But he needs to be held accountable for his actions, and he needs to go to jail for fraud. If that occurs, that is likely going to restore more confidence into the industry because people are going to be able to believe, okay, bad things happen in crypto. Sorry, I hit the mic. Bad things happen in crypto, but at least they don't get away with it. Part of the reason that the judicial system exists is to ensure that bad actors and criminals are made examples of. And Sam Bankman-Fried does need to be made an example of as far as the way the judicial system works. It's very important that he gets prison time for what he did. Eric Wallen donated $2, said, you think we already bought him, Jebb? BTC. I think it's possible. I don't see us being out of the woods just yet. I'm not anywhere near confident enough to say that because you don't ever know if something could happen to Binance. I mean, for all we know, Coinbase could go bankrupt when we see Q4 financials. That could be terrible. We could just keep hiking rates into oblivion and it never gives Bitcoin a let up. We could see China invade Taiwan. As I said, President Xi Jinping could, something could happen to old Pres Xi Jinping and China could implode on itself. All of these things are big black swan events that are waiting to happen that could happen. You could see a nuclear weapon go off in Ukraine. We don't know what's going to occur. Hopefully none of those terrible things do occur, but hopefully the Ukrainian war would never happen. Hopefully the pandemic would never happen. Hopefully FTX, Luna would never happen. We can hopefully and prayerfully, and we should be hopeful and prayerful, but bad things do still happen. So have we bought him from a technical stance? I'm not convinced. From a black swan stance, one black swan of a dozen possibilities that we know of could drop Bitcoin to fresh lows at any point. And that's one of the problems, is that a lot of the mainstream media is talking about that, and many of the large companies that have a dozen analysts on staff that are constantly looking at things to inform their CEO realize the same thing. At any point, a multitude of different things could occur that could crash the price of Bitcoin. Any number of things could completely decimate the price of Bitcoin. You could have an announcement tomorrow by the SEC that says, yep, Bitcoin's a security. Boom! Market crashes. Said we were going to talk about Gary Gensler a little bit later. Gary Gensler has way too much power, and yet the power that he does have, he does not wield wisely. That's the problem that we have with Gary Gensler. All right. Let's go ahead and move on here to none other than the news story of the hour, Sam Bankman-Fried. SBF was arrested just as he was to testify to Congress about FTX. Here's what will happen at the hearing. Sam Bankman-Fried, who goes by SBF, is at the center of the business scandal of the year. His cryptocurrency exchange, FTX, blew up suddenly in November, leaving millions of customers in the lurch. Everyone wants answers, including Congress, where SBF was supposed to testify on Tuesday. In a shocking turn of events, he was instead arrested on Monday night by authorities in the Bahamas, where he was residing at the request of the U.S. government. With SBF's notable absence, the hearing will likely yield some tough questions from lawmakers, including into the investigation by the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York that led to his arrest. It will possibly create some awkward moments for members of Congress themselves, many of who have been implicated in SBF's web of failure. Here's what you need to know. The hearing will begin at 10 a.m. Eastern and will be streamed by the House of Representatives on YouTube and broadcast live on C-SPAN 3. So if you want to ditch this stream, then you can go look at that. Hold off, please. We like having you here. After years of building up his reputation as the crypto industry's golden child, Sam Bankman-Fried had a spectacular fall from grace. Congress is looking to find how the debacle happened and what it means for the volatile crypto industry at a time when lawmakers are debating legislation. In the wake of the arrest, they will also want to inquire about the criminal, even though details of it are still emerging. With SBF in custody, the only speaker left on the docket is John Ray III, a U.S. attorney who famously led the failed energy company Enron through its bankruptcy proceedings. He is also the current CEO of FTX and said that this is the largest. In fact, they have the quote here. This is a famous quote by this point. He declared that such a complete failure of corporate controls and such a complete absence of trustworthy financial information has occurred here he has never seen in his decades of experience. SBF is facing a plethora of charges, with the New York Times reporting that criminal charges including wire fraud conspiracy, securities fraud conspiracy, and money laundering. The Securities and Exchange Commission also announced that it has authorized separate charges for violations of securities law. If prosecutors decide to make him an example, it's exactly what we were talking about a second ago, some lawmakers have said to look to the most notorious fraudster of the 2000s, Bernie Madoff, who was sentenced to 150 years in federal prison. Oof. The other uncomfortable elephant in the room will be SBF's previous prominent stature in Washington. As a major advocate for crypto regulation, SBF was the industry's face in the Capitol, frequently meeting with lawmakers and regulators. In the wake of his dissent, there will be probes about SBF's political donations and how much he shaped lawmakers' views on how to approach crypto regulation. The pro-crypto legislatures at the hearing are likely to shoot barbs directed towards Gary Gensler, the chair of the SEC, who many hold accountable for failing to stop the FTX disaster, although the majority of the company's business operated offshore in the Bahamas. So that's all I'm going to say out of that article. Essentially, funny timing. That's the main thing I have to think here, is that, so you're telling me, and I don't think we know enough right now, but the part of the U.S. federal government arrested Sam Bankman-Fried on the day that he was supposed to testify before the U.S. federal government. One of the reasons that decentralization is such a good idea is because centralization on that scale often doesn't work. Centralization of government works on a small to medium-sized nation, but when you get to the point of having a country the size of the United States, the most powerful nation in the history of mankind, having that kind of central authority is very difficult, even with modern technology. It was far more difficult in empires of old, like Rome, where you had to send a message and it took 15 days to get there. We have the internet now and telecommunication. But it is still very difficult to coordinate everything. Who arrested him? Who went about arresting Sam Bankman-Fried the day that he was supposed to testify before Congress? Shouldn't that have taken precedent? Shouldn't he have been arrested weeks ago and been in custody and he walks into Congress in handcuffs? Like, what is going on here? I would like to know, because there's not a lot of information on why the U.S. government is working the way that it did. Why was he not already extradited from the Bahamas? The Bahamas work very closely with the United States. The Bahamas cannot stand on their own. They are a tiny country. They need the United States to be on their good side. And the last thing the Bahamas wants is to harbor a fugitive who just collapsed a $32 billion cryptocurrency exchange. The Bahamas does not want that. They want the U.S. government to love them so that they keep sending tourists there. The Bahamas does not want to be on our bad side. So I'm really shocked that he was not extradited sooner. And it, frankly, to me, the only way that I can believe that he was not extradited sooner was that the United States federal government didn't ask sooner. Because surely the Bahamas would have complied within 24 hours of that request and gone and arrested him. Surely. Maybe the government wanted him to do the press tour. Maybe he was put up to the press tour by Gary Gensler to deflect blame from the SEC to himself. You can put on all kinds of conspiracies. I don't know what the answer is. All I know is it's a very strange question. Why was he not already arrested? This dude is clearly a criminal. And even if you somehow think that he's not, he clearly needs to be investigated as one. And that's where, you know, being detained for the sake of being before a court of law comes into play. So it's surprising that he wasn't already. Anyway, got another article here I want to read you about this. SEC charges former FTX CEO SBF for defrauding investors a day after his arrest. That is quite a lot of alphabet soup right there. The Securities and Exchange Commission charges former FTX, which who knows what that means. Freak, I messed up and lost the transactions. Maybe that's what it stands for. CEO Sam Bankman-Fried for defrauding investors a day after his arrest. SEC has filed charges against the former CEO Sam Bankman-Fried, accusing him of defrauding U.S. customers and concealing the diversion of customer funds. Good. Finally. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission has filed charges against SBF, the former CEO of now bankrupt crypto exchange FTX. The SEC has charged Bankman-Fried with violating the anti-fraud provisions of the Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Exchange Commission, the Securities Exchange Act of 1934. The SEC's complaint seeks injunctions against future securities law violations that prohibit Bankman-Fried from participating in the issuance, purchase, offer, or sale of any securities except for his own personal account. So basically, they want to block him from ever being able to do this kind of thing again. That's what an injunction is. SEC charged Bankman-Fried for orchestrating a scheme to defraud equity investors in FTX Trading Ltd., FTX. The regulatory body noted that the former CEO concealed his diversion of FTX customers' funds to crypto trading arm firm Alameda Research while raising more than $1.8 billion from investors. We allege that Sam Bankman-Fried built a house of cards on a foundation of deception while telling investors that it was one of the safest buildings in crypto, said SEC Chair Gary Gensler. The fresh charges against the CEO came just a day after his arrest by Bahamian authorities at the request of U.S. authorities. Just hours after Bankman-Fried's arrest, SEC announced they were preparing to file charges against the FTX co-founder, which will be separate from the ones leading to his most recent arrest in the Bahamas. So essentially, there are two different charges being brought against him. The SEC is bringing charges against him, and I'm not sure exactly who else is bringing charges against him, but another branch of the U.S. federal government is bringing charges against him, including fraud and wire fraud and all kinds of different fraud that we've talked about. So, what gives? First of all, why did it take so long for him to get arrested? I think it's very curious that Gary Gensler is now getting to come in here and make himself look like the hero by saying, we allege that Sam Bankman-Fried built a house of cards on a foundation of deception while telling investors that it was one of the safest buildings in crypto, said SEC Chair Gary Gensler. This reminds me of the Bay of Pigs. I'll tell you why. The CIA, under John F. Kennedy, failed to overthrow Castro, upset Castro, so Castro aligned himself more with the Soviets. The Soviets started sending nuclear missiles to Cuba, and then the Cuban Missile Crisis took place, and John F. Kennedy was made out to be a hero for it, when John F. Kennedy's government was the one that caused the crisis. So this is looking a lot like that because essentially John F. Kennedy was made out to be a hero despite the fact that he was fixing something that he broke. It's kind of what this is looking like with Gary Gensler. Gary Gensler's complete and total failure to hold FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried accountable before they went bankrupt. What, is that forgotten about now? Where's the... Oh, wow, I screwed up. Yeah, I need to... Maybe I should step down and let somebody else try and do this job because I clearly am not very good at it. Where's that? We allege that Sam Bankman-Fried built a house of cards on a foundation of deception while telling investors that it was one of the safest buildings in crypto. You know what your job is? Is to tell people whether the building is safe. Following that analogy, Gary Gensler, you are the housing inspector. You are the building inspector. Why didn't you tell them that it wasn't one of the safest buildings in crypto? That's your job. Of course a company is going to make themselves out to be the safest building in crypto. Every company does that. It's called PR, advertising, branding. Of course they're going to do that. For the... Duh. It's Gary Gensler's job of the SEC to tell the industry whether or not it is a safe building. That's their job. And they shouldn't be allowing that to take place. The SEC is the one that messed up, and Gary Gensler is the chair, and they need to be held accountable. Yes, Sam Bankman-Fried needs to be held accountable for what he did. Gary Gensler needs to be held accountable for watching it happen. especially with how much interaction Sam Bankman-Fried and Gary Gensler had, especially with how much interaction FTX had pushing for crypto regulation. Why was that not something that the SEC was over? They're coming after everybody. Why didn't they come after FTX? I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. But I do have a very important question, and that is, why did the SEC not act sooner? Don't get it. Do not understand. Do not understand. Department of Justice. Thank you, CryptoSec guy. That's what I thought. What Jebb, it changes the way his lawyer is going to play the game now. They don't want him talking to anyone that could incriminate himself. What Jebb is saying is that the DOJ knows his lawyers won't let him talk if he's in custody, so they arrested him to stop him from talking to Congress. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. I think that is probably what happened. Yeah. Anyway. Let's see. Someone didn't want SBF to testify. That's what it seems like. He'll end up testifying anyway, but apparently somebody didn't want him to testify. OMAC is in chat. Welcome. And hello, my friend. Lock him up. He'll soon point the finger at Caroline, and she will point fingers at him. That's right. Colin McDonald in chat. Shout out to you, my friend. All right. Well, let's go ahead and do my favorite segment of the stream before we wrap out here. And you know what it is. Drum roll, please. That was awful. I need to get a stream deck with some sound effects on it. It is none other than the must-watch Musk watch. Elon Musk being the biggest person on Twitter now, unsurprisingly. And he's acting like a Twitterite. He's acting like somebody who uses Twitter because he's getting very political, starting firestorms, taunting the bots, and trolling Twitter, the company. He said, the ratio of digital to biological compute is growing exponentially. So Elon's a giant nerd, and essentially saying there's a lot more computers that are coming into the world than humans. Follow Rabbit. I don't know. Not really sure what he was getting at there. Bots, that's a good one. That's a good one. Got to give that. Also, by the way, like right after I got off stream yesterday, I realized what reference he was making. The Branch Covidians are upset. He's making a reference to the Branch Davidians, the people that followed, what's it, David Koresh? What was his name? David Koresh at Waco is what he was talking about. He's making a joke that they're like David Koresh, which I'm not gonna go along with that. But if any of you guys have ever seen the documentary, movie, I guess it is Waco, or studied Waco, whoo, that's gonna get some people mad. That's gonna get some people real mad that he compared them to David Koresh. If you don't know what Waco was, I'm going to be very careful about how I describe it on YouTube because I don't want to get deplatformed just for some of the words that are utilized. David Koresh, I'll do this the way that I talk to my wife when I'm trying not to say a word in front of my son. David Koresh was a CULT leader, and not the FBI, the ATF basically came and there was a big battle back in the 90s. If you guys know what that is, you know what that is. And so people are probably very mad that he's referring to them as Branch Davidians. He said the woke mind virus is either defeated or nothing else matters. There is definitely a woke mind virus going on. I will say that. Calling all bots and trolls. Please attack me. Cool, the bots are so far unable to swarm to the top of my replies. Hope you're having a lovely Sunday. That's nice. Now things get more spicy. Just one more lockdown, my king. Yes, that's pretty true. Anyway, under pressure from hundreds of activists, Twitter deplatformed Trump, the sitting U.S. president, even though they themselves acknowledge that he didn't violate the rules. The most recent drop of the Twitter files, it's a must-read. You need to read that. It's very interesting. Very, very, very interesting, the hoops that Twitter jumped through to remove him, despite other heads of state literally calling for mass ending of life, and they managed to stay on the platform. So, definitely want to show you that. Matrix analogy, follow the white rabbit. Thank you. My brother, I love your show. Thank you, Vito Mick. Really appreciate that. Chief Twit, yep, there you go. Watch them do no rate hike at all, and the SPY goes to 450 by Christmas. Yeah, that's something I didn't talk about today. The SPY has been doing very well. The SPY has obviously jumped quite substantially on this news. And in fact, I'll show you really quickly. The SPY is actually sitting in a very important region right now. It's sitting just below this downtrending level of resistance that's been in play for quite some time. And if we are able to see the market maintain itself up here, you could actually see a rally on the SPY, and that'd be very, very beneficial for the market at large. Let's see. And like I said, guys, what are your thoughts about BRICS? I think two of the constituent members, China and Russia, are falling apart at the seams, and I think India is only aligned with China because they are the regional power. But if something happens to China, India will frankly probably align itself with the West. Brazil being I think that entire alliance, BRICS, if you don't know what that is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, I think it is. Who is the S in BRICS? I think it's South Africa. Yeah, South Africa. That's what I thought. I thought it was. I just want to make sure. Those 5 nations are it's a relatively powerful alliance right now. They're also spread all over the planet. They don't have the benefit that NATO has of all being right next to each other, or just having one ocean apart, but they're allies on both sides of the ocean. Russia and China are close, but they're actually not as ideologically aligned as you would think. They declared that no limits friendship in January, and then that didn't go very far because China did not want to get mixed up in that conflict with Ukraine, since China is the world factory, and if they upset the rest of the free world, they have no one to sell to, and they have no one to get raw resources from, and they have to rebuild their entire economy in the span of 12 months, which will not ever take place in a less than cataclysmic fashion. So BRICS, I think that in the next 5 years, you're going to see the disintegration of Russia and China as states as we know them, and they're probably going to go through either revolution, extreme depression, or turn into a one-man totalitarian dictatorship, more so than they already are, and look a lot like a larger North Korea with a nuclear arsenal. If they don't collapse completely on themselves, they're likely going to turn into a North Korea kind of failed state, which doesn't leave the rest of BRICS with a lot of advantages, because South Africa wants to be aligned with the West. The main reason they're aligned with China, and therefore BRICS, is because of the amount of investment that China is making into Africa. But if China's economy falls apart, China's going through I'm going a little over time here, but just so you know, China's going through a huge demographical crisis. By 2060, they're going to have lost 300 million people of their population due to the aging that's going on from the one-child policy. China is going to go through a demographic collapse, the likes of which we have never seen before in human history since the 13th century when the Black Plague swept through. We've never seen this before in 700 years. We're also going to end up seeing something very similar happening in Russia, because Russia has an upside-down demographical pyramid also. They've also got, as far as inside of that demographical pyramid, they have their core cultures and ethnicities shrinking rapidly that actually support Russia, and the ethnicities that do not support the Russian state are growing very quickly. You can thank the Uyghurs. They are, excuse me, not the Uyghurs, I'm sorry. You can thank the Chechens. They are growing very, very quickly, and they are not friends of Russia. So Russia is going to collapse in on itself in the next 10 years, if it doesn't in the next 2 already. And that entire industry, that entire alliance will probably fall apart. Anyway, guys, I'm over time. I got to go. Make sure that you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, sign up for Lux Algo. Before I go, though, I do just first want to thank each and every single last one of you for watching, as always. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.
Oh, I got a real good feeling.